Hi, and welcome back to the RHCSA series on RHEL 10. This is Module 2B, Essential Command Line Tools. In this lesson, we'll cover day-to-day Linux commands you use as a system administrator, just the basics really to get you going. Things like navigating directories, managing files, redirecting output, searching logs, connecting to servers, editing configuration files, and archiving data. So I've just logged back into my Red Hat 10 box. So we've got a desktop environment at the moment, but most of the things day to day you'll do in Linux I'll be actually using the CLI, so or the terminal or console. People, multiple different ways of calling it. The console generally is directly on the system itself, whether it be via VMware or the like, whereas the terminal might be more of the terminal application, and then SSH finally is remotely to connect. So on the screen here, we've got on the top right hand corner, we have the options around the system itself, so we can see the network status, we can adjust the volume, we've got different power modes, we can set different styles. We've got kind of the basics, and we've also got the settings options here. We can lock the system, and we also can just shut it down. So if we click that, we can actually got the options to suspend, log off, and that kind of stuff. This one will just lock the screen. And obviously I'll just need to log back in. And on the other side, we've got the Red Hat. And if we click on that, we will get the menu. So we can actually do a search for most things. We can also click the Rubik's Cube or 3x3 dot icon, which is show all apps, and you'll see all the apps currently installed on the system. There's the very bare bones at the moment, and we can obviously install further apps in later videos. For now, the most important one we want here is the terminal. So this will be your local terminal. As I mentioned earlier, we've got the basic information about your system, about what you're currently connected to in the terminal window at the start here. So this is my username, this is what system I'm at, so at, and then this is the system's name, so it's RHEL 10-main. We then have a tilde, or this has got a colon here, and then we have a tilde to say I'm in my current directory, or squiggly line as I like to call it. And we've also got a $sign to say that we're not a root user, standard user. So the first thing I can do is actually a command called who am I. So who am I? And it'll tell you your username currently. So if that reads C England, then in this case it's my current user. If I escalate it to root and run the same command, I will get a different output. So to escalate to root, as I mentioned earlier, you can run individual commands as root, or you can escalate your entire command line to root. Generally, best practice is to just escalate the individual command. So do sudo, so super user do, and then type who am I. It's then going to ask me my sudo password, so that's my own password to that is available to escalate. So if my user is able to escalate to root, then this will work. If I isn't, then I'd have to log in as the root user or a user that is able to escalate as root. So I put my password in, and you got a different output now. So who am I? I'm root now. So the root user is the master user of this operating system, and they have unrestricted permissions across the OS. So if you're able to escalate to root, essentially you can do anything on the system. So you could pretty much break anything. You can remove the core system files if you wanted to. So it's obviously one that you want to use sparingly if you can. So the next command I'll use is the hostname command. So this will give me the hostname of the system. This one can be run by any user, so there's no specific privileges required. So you can just see the hostname of the system. If you want to get the IP address, we've got another one, which is just IP ADDR and you'll get the IP address. You get two outputs. So one is what's called the loopback address. That generally can be ignored. So that's basically your local address, which is itself. So it's just loop back in like a loop. And then we've got the second interface, which is the actual network interface. This is the one we configured in the first video as part of the 2A video. We can see the important part here is this inet here. This is your IPv4 address. We'll talk a bit more about that, but that's your IP address we'll use later. So it's 2.15 to remember. Okay, so the next thing I can do is the clear command. So see, just type in clear, and you'll see it clears my history, and there's at least on the screen there, and so it's nice and clean and clear there. The next thing I can use is actually the up arrow. So if I use the up arrow key on my keyboard, I can actually see what I've typed previously. So I can see I could type the clear command, the IP address, host name, the sudo who am I, and actually I can just use the up arrow to select the one I want to use previously, and then press the return key to rerun that command. Another really helpful one is actually using the control and then R, and you'll get a thing called a reverse search. So I can actually start typing what I can remember from that previous command. So I remember, for example, I typed in IP, I think. So if I type in IP, you'll see automatically start typing IP address. That was the rest of the command. And you can actually see in here, this is what I've just searched for, the two letters I've typed, and this is what it's matched. So if I'm happy with that, then I can click tab, and then it will fill out. And then again, I can click return to enter that command. The next one I want to look at is the ls command. So this is just a listing command, and it will list what's currently in your directory. So if I just do an ls, you can see there's a number of files, it looks like at the moment, for probably most likely folders for all these different directories we have on the system. We don't really get much information with the standard ls command, so I always recommend you running at least ls -l. So -l. So what you'll be doing is providing the ls command, and then a -l, which is called a flag. So that flag gives additional options, and there are many different options you can provide. But to keep it simple, we're just doing ls -l. And you can see in this output, we have a number of things in here. I won't go through all of it right now, but we can see in here, we've got a directory, which is marked by the D there. We've got read, write, and execute, read and execute, read and execute. And then we've got who owns the file, which group owns the file, and then when it was created. So this is when I created it at this specific time, and we can see that they are all these different directories. At the moment, I don't have any files in the root directory here. What I can do is an ls -l, and then with a capital R, I can then list anything inside these folders. It might be quite a verbose output, but we'll have a look. So we can see all of these folders are actually empty. So if I just scroll up a little bit to where I started the command, we can see a total of 0 there as an output. It's all directories, and there's no files inside any of those. So let's use another nice command called touch. So if I just do again a clear, and then just type touch to just create a file. So I'll just do touch in my documents. So I'll just do documents and type tab. It'll also start filling it. If I just write do, because we've got a downloads folder as well, and I'll just if I press tab 2 times, it will tell me the options available to me. So that's quite a nice shortcut. So if I just type D, you'll see desktop as well. And note, if I use a lowercase d, it doesn't match at all. So the important thing with Linux is everything is case sensitive. So case sensitivity is really important. So I need to make sure I've got a capital D, double tab. I can see the options there. I want to put in documents. So documents, it will automatically fill it. It's also added the slash on there at the end there, so that again that denotes I'm going to put it inside there. So I'm going to do touch document slash, and then we're going to call it, I don't know, file.txt. Very original. It's going to create a blank file called file.txt in the documents directory. So if I just do an ls again -l, we notice we don't see anything in this directory here at all. We could do an ls -l r again, but instead let's do ls -l and then do a reference that documents directory. So we provide a bit more information to this command. Go documents, and now we can see the file. Let's do another ls. Let's do it on the etc or etc directory, so etc. You can see a number of files owned by root. So you can see a load of different files and folders. Quite interesting. You can see different permissions, which we'll talk a lot more in detail later on, but we can see pretty much all owned by root, which is not surprising because they're all the important system configuration files and whatnot are all in this directory. So let's do another clear. What we can do is, so if we got, let me just quickly create a file in root as a root user. So just do sudo, and then let's make myself root. So sudo bash. Let's ask me my password again. And by saying bash, I'm asking it to run a bash shell. So that's another shell. So that was my previous shell was in. I've just asked it to run a super user version of that bash. So I'm now into that root user level. And what I can do is do a who am I? And you can see I'm root now, which is great. And we also can do a pwd, print work directory, or working directory perhaps. And if I press enter, we can see I'm actually still in my home, my actual standard users home directory, because it hasn't changed my path. So if I want to go into the root users directory, I can do cd change directory space, and we can provide /root/. They have a special home directory, so they don't have a home/root. It's just /root/ is their home directory, not /home/root. They have a very specific one because again they're the super administrator. So we can do it this way, so cd/root, or we could also have done cd and then just a tilde, because that tilde is the same as the user's root directory. So if you want to save time, rather than trying to remember /home/c England/ whatever your username is, you can do cd and then just a tilde, cd space tilde or squiggly line. You get the you go straight into the home directory. So what I'll do is, again, let's just do a touch, and then we just do again root -file.txt. So I've made a file, and we can do an ls -l, and we can see the file here. We've got root file, which is owned by root, and it's got read-write privileges to this user, which is the root user, read privileges to the root user, and read privileges to actually anyone, which is the last section of this. So that's good. Anyone can potentially read it, and we will then exit from root. I'm back to my standard user again. So let's do an ls -l/root. In this case, what do you think will happen? So I'm a standard user trying to look what's in the root home directory. In this case, we'll get permission denied because we don't have the relevant permissions to actually look into that directory. So the only way for us to get the permissions is either, again, you can do a sudo bash and run it completely as a root user, or because we have sudo permissions already, we can do a sudo ls -l/root. and then we can see that what's in the folder. Okay, so let's have a look now at what's called hidden files. So I'll go do a clear again. So if we do ls-l, we know this output comes up. What we can also do is ls-l a. So a means shows hidden files, and you'll see the output is vastly increased, and it's got a lot of different files here that are quite interesting. So some of these are like config files and stuff like that for your specific user. Obviously some of these are specifically for VirtualBox, VBox client. We've also got a bash.history, bash.profile, and a bash rc, and bash.logout. So these have quite interesting configurations for your user. This bash.history actually stores all of the history of all the commands you've run, so that you can reference them later. So if I do a clear one more time, we can then, as we'd use the up arrow, we can see all our bash history, and we can do what's called a cat, which means actually concatenate, to combine files, but a lot of people use it, myself included, to just list out file information, or the contents of a file, sorry. We can use this cat command. So we just do a cat on dot, because it's a hidden file. So I'll just get a look at the output. We just do la, and then dot, I think it's bash underscore history. Just confirm that's the correct file. Yep. And the important part, because it's hidden, it'll have a dot at the start of it. So if you want to make any file hidden from the ls-l, you need a dot at the start. So what we can do is, if we want to look at what's in that, so we can just do a cat dot bash underscore history. And you can see it's literally all the commands that we've run since the last time I opened the command line. So if I exit this, completely exit the terminal, it's going to then write to that to that file, and then if I open the terminal up again and then do another cat, you'll see the output's a hell of a lot larger now, because it's actually written that back. So it doesn't write it live, it kind of writes it at the end. Okay, so one more thing we can try is if we go to CD downloads, and we just want to go back a step. Rather than doing something like this, which is we'll step you back, you can also just do a dash, and that will just step you back a directory, and also print out the current directory you're in as well, which is quite nice. So if you moved multiple directories, say you moved, I don't know, from one part of the operating system to a completely different place. So let's go from here to var log, where this is where all the logs are stored in the system. So you've got like the install logs, you've got uninstall logs, you've got boot logs, all that kind of stuff is quite interesting there. You can obviously do a cat in that. Some of those are relatively large, so cat in those can be a massive amount of information that could be quite overwhelming. You obviously can look at that. We can do a CD and a dash, and we're back to where we was originally. So we don't need to remember where we were before. We can just go in there. Let's have a look at one of these log files anyway while we're here. So just go var log, and if we just do again a cat on, let's do dnf.log. Okay, we can see any error messages. So this is our complete log file. You can see it's got a lot of information in here. You can see when I installed the kernel devel in the last video. We can see the size. We can also see the output and how it completed here, and all the cleaning up commands are contained in there. So that's when it ended, and then there was another session started at this time and date. So it's quite interesting, and we'll look at how to filter that in just a bit. So a next thing we want to do, let's go back to where it was. Okay, so let's go to, let's do a little bit of a demo here and what is a common activity a engineer may do on their system. So let's go to cd, etc. SSH. So SSH is the it's like a daemon that runs in the system, or it's like a service similar to a service on Windows. It's a task that runs constantly, and that allows us to remotely connect. So it's secure shell, so secure connection to a server. So you can use SSH to connect to your server remotely, for example. Obviously, you'd have to open firewalls and whatnot, but for the sake of this, it allows you to remotely connect to your system. So if you have a network, you can have one server be able to connect to another, or your client system be able to connect to the server, as an example. And it allows you to remotely manage the systems. So it's really good, SSH. SSH has a configuration file, and that is called sshd_config. So here's the sshd config. So what I want to do before I do anything else is actually back this config up. So what I will need to do is just do a sudo bash to save myself doing 100 sudo commands. Let's shortcut this slightly. So I'm now in a sudo in the same directory. Again, you can do that pwd. Oh, yep, I'm definitely in the right directory I want to do now. Again, we can do that long list and just check what's in here. And you can see there's the sshd_config. So this has some configuration. We won't look at it to you right now, but we'll just do a copy. So cp means copy. We've got mv for move, but let's do a copy. And we're going to say, best way if you're doing a copy, you can do in this current directory, you can do stay under config there. So you selected the file, and then we're going to provide where we want to back it up to. So we're in the current directory. We don't need to provide the directory, but you still can provide it. It doesn't hurt. For this example, I will. So SSH, call it sshd config, and we just call it .back. So as a backup file. So we'll now have a look again for, that's a bit of force of habit there. ls minus la. Let's just do minus l, and then just type ssh_config and do a star at the end. And by doing the star, we actually see it's got 2 matches in this specific item here. So we can see here, we have the SSH config that was created on this date. And then we've got the SSH config.back, which we just created just now. So that's literally a good way of backing up the files. So you're going to make modifications. Say if you're going to make modification to that in real life, you're going to, I don't know, make a change to the way the SSH is configured. You'd make a backup first, and then you have a reference file for anything that's, if you need to make anything, any changes later on. Say you've made a mistake and you want to change the name of the backup file or a name of any file. What you can do is an MV or a move. Move allows you to obviously move files from one place to another, but also allows you to rename files. So it's quite versatile option here. So we can do SSH again, d_config.back, and let's just rename it to sshd_config.backup. Okay, sshd_config.back to sshd_config.backup. Yep, that looks good. Okay, the same doesn't recognize it. Let's have a look. Why have I put sshd there? I've just done the SSH one, so probably should stick with the SSH one. So let's do a clear and right. So let's move it then. So we can use mv and then ssh underscore config dot back to ssh underscore config dot backup, say. You can see there's no output at all. But now if we do an ls minus l and then ssh underscore config star, we now just see ssh underscore config and ssh underscore config dot backup. So backing up the ssh config file. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about two more dangerous commands. Commands that we can use. So first one is the rm command, which is to remove a file. So by default, so if I just go ahead and ssh underscore config dot backup, if I just do an rm, what will happen is you get a prompt to say, do you want to remove this regular file? And if you say yes, it will remove it. Yes and enter, it will remove it. If you say no, it won't remove the file. So that's good. It gives you a nice prompt. We also have the -f to force it to remove. So this is obviously good for things like scripts. If you don't want it to confirm every time, obviously when you're using a script, you don't really want it to confirm. But in the case of this, we want it just to remove. I don't want that file any longer. I want it to be removed. So I'll just do rm-f. And then I'll just do the ls. So I can just literally up arrow until I get to the ls command. And you see it's gone. And then there's also, finally, let's go and create that file again. Where's the cp? And then I'm going to do an rm-rf. So this is .back rather than .backup now. So that's rf. So this one is very, very dangerous. So this means a force and a recursive force. So I would never recommend you do this ever, unless you want to destroy your system. If you do an rm-f/, you're going to literally destroy a lot of the files on the system and cause untold amount of corruption. Even as a standard user, you'll probably lose a lot of your home directories and a lot of your configuration for yourself. So it's just the command never to run. So when you run rm with rf or the other options, make sure you run it with a lot of caution. Okay, so we've talked about creating files. Let's have a look at some ways of manipulating text and having a look at text. So let's use the less command to have a look at the varlog messages file, which is a good one to look at to see for any issues on the system. So let's do that. So we can do less and then /var /log/messages and press enter, and we'll see a lot of information in here. So you can use this / command and then type in here, for example, error, and it should show you any errors in there, and you can use the N option to keep searching through the output. You can see there's always going to be a few errors here and there. Obviously, as long as it's not fatal errors, then we're generally okay. If I click escape, press escape once, and then colon, and then Q, you get out of that. So that's the less command. Also, to troubleshoot different files, you may use the head or the tail of a file. So the head shows you the first n number of lines, so it's normally 10 by default, but you can do n and then choose a number. So we could do n minus, we could look at, I don't know, 11 lines in the file. So we just do let's look at var log messages, and that's the top 11 lines. Obviously we can change that as accordingly. Same thing can be done with the tail. So the tail is the end of the log, and the same thing applies. We can say I want to see the last 3 lines of var log messages, and there are the last 3 lines. It may look like more than a line, but actually it is 3 lines. So there's 1, 2, and then there should be a third one here. See, 3 lines in total. Another really great one for troubleshooting is using tail and then doing a -f. So this follows the log. So as stuff happens on the system, it will follow that. So if there's anything new happens, it will happen live on the system. As you can see, this is still moving because there's new things happening on the system, and this log is logging live to your terminal. So this is really great for troubleshooting. It's something I really recommend you learn. That's a really great skill. And to cancel out that, you just use Control and then C. Let's clear that, and let's go and change the logon banner for the system. So it's when you log in via terminal, it has like a message. Sometimes it can be like security messages, this is a monitored system, that kind of thing, or it could be just a message to any user that joins. Let's do first we'll do the most complex method, which is the VI. This is famously difficult to use. So this is a text interpreter for the terminal. So we can do etc/motd, or message of the day, and you get some output that looks like this. If I press I for insert, I can then write message. So let's write, welcome to this server, and then I've got to press escape, and you'll see the output's changed. So now it's not like I can type anymore, and at the bottom there the insert's gone. And then if I press colon and then W, that means write, and then quit. You'll see I'm out. If I do a cat on that file, you will see what I've written on there is in the file. We can then use a bit more of an easier one, which I recommend to students, which is the MOTD with using Nano. So Nano is a lot nicer. You can see I can literally just type straight into here, and all of these options are just literally Control plus those options. So you can see exit is Control plus X, and it says save modified buffer. You can say yes or no with Y and N, and I'll just say no because I don't want to change it. But let's go back into Nano and have a look in. We've got options that cut and pastes. We can go to specific lines. It's really quite good, and it's relatively simple as well, which makes it really good for first time users. VI is something to learn. It's really flexible, and it's installed on every system everywhere all the time, whereas Nano can be a bit hit and miss. In some cases, it's not installed everywhere. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is output redirection. So what we can do is we've got a few options with regards to redirection. We can redirect positive output or negative output. So in some cases, you might want to get the complete output of a command and save it into a text file. So let's go back into my, I still root, so let's just go to my root home directory. And I'm really interested in getting a list of everything that's in the etc directory. So what I can do is ls, okay, -l, and then the directory. So that's the same command we was going to run earlier. We're just going to call it whatever we want the file to. So we'd call it etc-list.txt. And what you see is there's no output to your system at all. And then we can use something like VI or Nano. Let's have a look in Nano at this list, and you'll see it looks exactly like it would in the console, but the fact is it's all in a text format, and we can modify that accordingly if we needed to. or we could have it as a record for later. We can also add files into this existing file by just using the echo command. So echo will print whatever you say. So if I put something in brackets, hello, it will just print hello as a very simple option. And we can use this double pipe here to add it to the end of the file. So if I just did a single one, what it will do is overwrite what's already in that file with just hello. Obviously I don't want to lose what's in that file, so I can do two of them to mean that it will append the file with my new bit of information. So if I do that, I can then again do the nano on that file. If we go all the way to the bottom, I'll use page down to go to the bottom. I can see my hello message at the very bottom there that's written on a new line. So let's now look for just to get any errors. So if I do something that's going to cause an error, so if I do an ls on a directory that doesn't exist, let's just do a hello directory which doesn't exist on the OS, we get something like an error message here. So it cannot access no such file or directory. Yeah, so we got the error message from the ls of hello. So we just do a ls hello, and then we can do a two. So one is success, or a successful run. Two is failures or errors. And if we do again the same symbol, and then we just do an errors.txt, again we get no output. But if we have a look in that file, just do a quick cat, it's very small anyway, we get the error message. So again, we can use that for if we were writing a script or something like that, or if we're not interested in the error message, we know it's going to error, or we're only interested in any errors when we run the script, this will be the way to do it. Let's also have a look at another simple example of using cat with an option, a tool called grep, in a very simple way. So if we do cat var log secure, so that's the security log, so a bit of an interesting one. And then we use what's called a pipe. So this is the pipe symbol. You use the shift, and then it looks like a slash, and then above it's got like a long line. That's the pipe symbol. It should be on your keyboard somewhere. And then we can use grep to search for something in that directory, in that file. So let's just type SSH. We shouldn't have much, yeah, because we don't really log in with SSH very often. But we can see we have it listening on port 22, which is the SSH port, several times. That's probably when the system's booted up. And we can also see a sudo when the command that's happened via SSH. So that's quite a good example of what we'd use to search for specific information in a log file, as a good example. Grep can get really complex very quickly. We'll probably have a separate video just for grep, but in this case, you can just literally search for very simple things like text matches, but we can do things like regular expression, which it stands for basically it's global regular expression print. So grep is really, really powerful, but we won't talk about it here. Let's do an SSH connection. So if I exit out of here, we are back to my system. I'll just go back to my home directory, and I am happy and back in here. So at the moment, we haven't set up any other systems to do any networking because we haven't got to that part yet. So let's just SSH to our own system. And the easiest way is to do that is SSH, my username, so see England, and and we're going to provide the IP address we had earlier. We could also have a DNS name, but in this case we're not running DNS on our servers. So we're going to do 10.0, I think it was 2.15. I guess we'll find out if this is correct or not. And we see a message. So what it's saying is, this is the host, and it's given actually the IP address. In this case, the IP address and the host we're connecting to is the same because we're using the IP address. And it's saying we don't know the authenticity of this server. So the reason why is because we've never connected to this server before. So it's like a security check. So are you sure this is the system that you want to connect to, and you can say yes or no. And if you say yes, it will permanently add that to your local system to say that's a trusted system. So if I just Control C out of here, I'll go back again to my standard command line. I haven't SSH'd into that system yet, but I'll just rerun that command SSH, and you'll see that message is gone now because it's now trusted. So if that ever changed, that fingerprint, for whatever reason, you know, the system gets rebuilt or another system takes over the IP, you'll get their message again, and then you'll know that something's changed on that system, and maybe you should double check what you're connecting to. So we're going to SSH, we're going to provide my user password, and what we see here is welcome to the server. So that is that MOTD file, or message of the day file we configured earlier. That's in here. And then you'll see the CLI looks very similar to what we were just connected via the console, but this is via SSH. So this will be the same thing you'd be able to connect to potentially remotely across the world, depending on how you set it up. You probably don't want to expose SSH to the internet, because you'll probably get people trying to guess your password within seconds, but you could potentially do it through a VPN or something like that. Okay, so probably the only last thing I want to show in this video is talking about archiving and compression. So let me just leave SSH. If I just do exit, I'm out of SSH, I'm back on my console again. So if I just do a clear, I've got a nice clean console again. And what I want to do is I want to back up a specific file and save that as a tar archive. So it's a very simple one. We'll just create a tar file. It doesn't really compress it. So tar is like I think it was for tape archives. So it doesn't really do compression. We'll do compressions just shortly after this one. So first we'll just do we'll have to probably do a sudo. And we'll just do let's just do a sudo bash. Again, we can make our life easy here. We're in as root now, fantastic. And let's do a tar c create verbose file, create verbose file cvf. We're going to we got to give the file name, so that's why you got an F. So we're going to call it ssh-configs.tar because it's non-compressed. And then we're going to provide the files or folders we want it to back up. So I'm going to provide the two SSH files I want to back up. So ssh_config, etc. sshd_config, and press enter. That's fine. And then we should have a new file called ssh-configs.tar. And now, well, let's extract it to somewhere else. So tar, again, extract v for verbose file. So again, we've got to provide the file, config.tar. And where do we want to extract it? Let's extract it somewhere else. So -c, don't ask me why it's C. Yeah, config. And let's just extract it to the temp directory. So temp directory is a special directory on the system for temporary files. Generally, you make that place you can't execute scripts and files from. It's just literally a temporary storage directory that when you reboot, all the files in that directory will be deleted automatically. So it's a really good place to just store stuff temporarily. So I just get a message, etc. sshd config has been created. Let's go and have a look in temp. So cd temp. We don't necessarily need to cd into there, but let's just do that. ls-l. And what do we have in here? Okay, we have an etc. So let's go into etc. And then we have an ssh. We go into there. And then finally we have ssh config. So let me just do that on the top of the screen there, I know it's cut off a little bit. So if we go SS, etc., SSH, then I go into the SSH directory. We then have the two configs. So what do we note from this? What it does is also stores the path as well. So if you was in that local directory and create the tar, it wouldn't create the directories as well. But by giving the full directory and structure, it actually restore it to its directory structure as well. So that's quite nice if you want to back up like a complete bunch of files or something like that. Then you will restore the entire structure of the directory. Let's this time compress the file. So let's get a completely different file and create a I'll go back to my own home directory for the root user. Let's do a tar again. So you can still use the tar command. It's really quite powerful. This time we're going to do C, create, Z to create a tar gz or gzip file, and then V and then VF again. We call it logs.tar.gz. Logs can be quite large especially. And let's do the var log messages. So we're troubleshooting something and we need to provide the logs to support. We may want to provide the var log messages to support. So we're going to create the directory. We're going to create the log tar gz. Again, just remove the leading file name. It's fine. And if we do ls, we have a logs.tar.gz. And if we do a tar, we need to also provide that z in the command. So z, x for extract, z for gz or tar.gz file, gunzip file, and then v for both, and file, logs.tar.gz minus capital C, and then we're going to put into temp again, and file log message is extracted. Let's again go into here. CD temp, and if we go in ls minus L, we have a new folder called var. So I'll just whoops, let's go back into temp, let's go clear, let's bring up back up to the top. So cd var now, and let's have a look in there. We've got a log, cd log, and then finally we've got the messages file, which is fantastic. Okay, so finally let's do one more thing. Let's go back to our root directory where we have our logs.tar.gz. Still, what we can do is do a tar tbf to test the file, and it will show you what's in there. So T, I call it test, so it makes it easy for me to remember, and that allows you to see for both files what's in that directory, what's in that compressed file. So it's a really good way of just seeing what's in there before you just extract it out to everything and potentially mess up your system. Okay, so that was really all I wanted to demo in this video. I hope it's been useful to you. If there's any questions or anything I can clarify, please put a comment in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and subscribe, because there'll be more videos like this. Thanks again for watching.